When I first moved into Brookstone Apartments, I didn't expect anything unusual. The place looked like every mid-sized American apartment complex. Tan bricks, a patchy lawn, and a pool that hadn't been cleaned since the Obama years. But rent was cheap, and after my breakup, I needed a fresh start. My unit, 2B, sat at the far end of the second floor, directly across from 2A. The door to 2A was closed when I hauled my boxes up the stairs. It had no welcome mat, no decorations, just a single peephole that felt like it was already watching me. The building was old enough that every step echoed through the hallway. I kept telling myself I'd get used to it. That first night, as I was setting up my TV, I heard scraping noises through the wall we shared. Slow, deliberate, metal against wood. It stopped, then came again, then silence. I figured my new neighbor was rearranging furniture. Around midnight, though, came 3 heavy knocks on my wall. Not the door, my wall. I froze. Then a muffled voice, deep and calm. "Keep your lights on tonight." I stared at the wall, heart pounding. "Who's there?" I called back. No answer. The next morning, I asked the building manager about 2A. She frowned. "That unit's been empty since the fire last year." I laughed nervously. "No, someone's in there." I heard him. She shook her head. "Trust me, nobody's rented that place since the accident." That word, accident, stuck with me. That night I stayed up, half expecting more knocks. But nothing came until around 3 a.m., when my hallway light flickered on its own. I peeked through my peephole and saw a man standing outside 2A facing the door. He wasn't moving, just standing there with his head slightly tilted, like he was listening for something inside. I almost opened my door to ask if he was okay, but something about his posture felt off, too stiff, too deliberate. Then he slowly turned his head toward me. Even though I was behind the peephole, I swear he looked right into my eye. The light flickered again, and he was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I found a note slid under my door. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting shaky. "He doesn't like it when they turn the lights off." There was no signature. I ran straight to 2A and knocked. No answer. I tried the handle, it was locked. Through the crack beneath the door, I saw nothing but darkness. Later that day, I caught my downstairs neighbor, a woman named Carla, smoking outside. She had that look of someone who'd lived there too long and seen too much. "Hey," I asked, "do you know who lives in 2A? She exhaled slowly. "No one should. But sometimes people say they see him. Middle-aged guy, gray coat, blank face. You'll hear him before you see him. If you're smart, you won't answer when he knocks." I laughed it off, but Carla didn't. "Last tenant that stayed in your unit left in the middle of the night. Didn't even take his stuff," she added. "Said the man next door kept talking through the walls." I told myself it was just a rumor. Every building has stories. But that night, the scraping started again, metal on wood, slower this time, closer. I pressed my ear to the wall. Between the sounds, I could hear faint breathing, then a whisper. "Turn it off." I looked around. The only light on was the lamp beside my couch. The whisper came again, louder. "Turn it off." I did. Silence. Then, from the dark, a soft chuckle. The next morning, the apartment felt wrong, like someone had been walking through it while I slept. My mug had moved. My keys weren't on the counter where I'd left them. And the lamp that I'd switched off after the whisper, it was back on. I checked my phone. 2 missed calls, both from unknown. No voicemail. When I went into the hallway, the air smelled faintly of smoke, the same bitter scent you get from wet ashes. The door of 2A was open just an inch, as if inviting me to peek. I told myself not to. But curiosity is a cruel thing. I nudged it wider. The apartment inside was stripped bare. No furniture, no curtains, just walls scorched black in places. The floor stained like something had burned there long ago. But at the far end, a single chair faced the wall we shared. and on that wall, written in small, childlike handwriting, were the words, "He still hears through you." A soft thump came from inside the wall, right behind the writing. I stumbled back, slammed the door shut, and ran to the manager's office. She looked up from her desk, confused. "Ma'am, 2A's door is open," I said. "Someone's in there." She frowned. "That can't be. Maintenance sealed that unit last week. No key works anymore." I dragged her upstairs to prove it, but when we reached the landing, the door to 2A was closed and padlocked tight. The manager gave me the kind of look people reserve for drunks or lunatics. "Get some rest," she said. "These old buildings make noises." That night I pushed my dresser against the shared wall. I didn't care if I was being paranoid. At 2:47 a.m. the scraping began again, harder this time, like nails dragging down wood. Then 3 knocks. I held my breath. A voice came through, calm and steady. "He said you shouldn't have looked," I whispered back before I could stop myself. "Who's there?" The voice paused, then said, "He can't stand the light." Something shifted behind the wall, a slow, heavy shuffle, and then the sound of breathing right next to my ear. I flipped on my lamp. The noises stopped instantly. I barely slept an hour. The next day, Carla knocked on my door holding a small cardboard box. "You left this by the mailboxes," she said. I hadn't ordered anything. The label was faded, addressed simply to Resident 2B. Inside was an old photograph, black and white, maybe from the 1950s. It showed the same hallway, same doors, same numbers. But in the photo, the man from last night stood outside 2A, holding a lantern, his face half blurred as if he'd moved during the shot. On the back, someone had written, "Keep the lights on." By that evening, every bulb in my apartment started to flicker. One by one they dimmed, buzzing softly until only the hallway light remained. Then came a knock on my door. I froze, waiting for a second knock, but instead the peephole went black. Someone was covering it from the other side, I whispered. "Who is it?" No reply, just slow breathing. Then the cover lifted, and for half a second I saw a gray face staring in, eyes like smoke. I jumped back. The door rattled violently, shaking the frame, and then silence. When I opened it moments later, the hallway was empty, except for a small pile of ash right in front of 2A. At that point, I decided I needed answers. The next morning, I went to the local library and asked the clerk if they had any old property records. She led me to a binder full of newspaper clippings. One headline caught my eye. "Apartment fire leaves 1 dead. 2 missing, Brookstone, 1989. According to the article, a tenant named Arthur Vale had been living in 2A when a gas leak caused an explosion. The building partially burned. Firefighters found Arthur's body sitting in a chair facing the wall. His wife and son were never recovered. The librarian frowned when I told her I lived in that building. "Some folks say he never left," she murmured. "That man was obsessed with keeping his family in the light. Wouldn't sleep without every lamp on. That night I left every bulb burning. But around 3 in the morning, I woke up to darkness. Power outage. I fumbled for my phone flashlight and froze when I saw movement across the room. A shadow stood there, tall and still, smoke curling from its shoulders like steam. The light from my phone flickered, dimming with each heartbeat. Then I heard the whisper, right next to me, the same calm voice from the wall. "He told you not to turn it off." The phone light died, and something cold touched my hand. I came to with the taste of metal in my mouth and the sound of the refrigerator humming again. Power was back. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds as if nothing had happened. For a few seconds, I almost believed I'd dreamed it all, until I noticed the black smear on my wrist. Ash. I scrubbed it off under the sink, but it left a faint gray mark, like it had burned into my skin. When I stepped into the hallway, Carla was already there, arguing with the maintenance guy. She pointed at 2A. I heard it again last night. Someone's in there. Tell him. The maintenance guy just shook his head. That unit's sealed tighter than Fort Knox. You two need to stop feeding each other ghost stories. He walked off, leaving us standing in silence. Carla turned to me. You heard it too, didn't you? I nodded. She lit a cigarette right there in the hall. There's a breaker box in the basement. If he's cutting our lights, that's where it starts. You coming? I should have said no. Instead, I followed. The basement was nothing but concrete, rust, and stale water dripping somewhere unseen. The air was colder down there, so cold I could see my breath. Carla's flashlight beam swept across the breaker panels. Everything looked normal until she reached one labeled 2A, 2B. The metal cover was blackened as if it had caught fire years ago. That's him, she whispered. Suddenly the light flickered. The bulb over our heads popped, showering us with sparks. In that half-second of darkness, I heard a voice behind me, low, close, almost gentle. He kept them bright so they could see him. I spun around, but no one was there. Only the faint smell of smoke. Carla's flashlight cut out. We stood in perfect blackness. Something moved through the dark. Slow steps, dragging, then a faint metallic scrape. Carla's breathing grew fast. Don't move, she whispered. Then a hand, ice cold, brushed my shoulder. I grabbed her arm and ran. We burst back into the stairwell, slammed the basement door, and didn't stop until we reached the second floor. When we looked back, thin trails of smoke leaked from the cracks around the door like the building itself was exhaling. That night I decided to leave. I threw clothes into a suitcase and started down the hall. The light outside 2A flickered violently. The door was open again. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe I thought I'd get proof, something to show the cops or the manager. I took one step inside. The air was thick, humid, like stepping into someone's breath. A faint glow pulsed from the far wall. The chair was gone. In its place stood an old-fashioned lantern, its flame burning steady, though there was no fuel inside, and next to it, a shadow of a man. Not a body, just the shape, made of smoke and trembling heat. He turned his head toward me, though he had no face, and said in that same steady tone, "You opened the light. Now you'll keep it." I stumbled back into the hallway. The lantern's glow followed me, spilling under the door as it closed on its own. My phone vibrated, unknown number again. I answered without thinking. Static. Then Emma's voice. Except Emma was my ex-girlfriend, and she'd moved 3 states away. "Turn them off," she whispered. "He's watching through them." The call dropped. By midnight, every light in the complex began to flicker. Every apartment, every hallway, like the building was breathing in rhythm. Tenants came out confused, shouting. The manager ran in with a flashlight, yelling for everyone to stay calm. Then all the lights went out. A deep hum rose from the walls, vibrating the floor. Through the blackness, shapes moved, shadows darker than the dark itself. People screamed. I backed against the wall, trying to find the stairwell. Then I saw him again, Arthur Vale, or what was left of him, standing in the center of the hallway, lantern blazing like a second sun. He lifted a hand, palm outward. The light flared. Everyone around me froze mid-motion, faces locked in horror. The air turned heavy, filled with the smell of burning hair, and then the light snapped back on. The hallway was empty. Every door stood open. Smoke curled up from the carpet. Only me and Carla were left standing. She looked at me, shaking. "We need to end it. He's using the lights. They keep him here." I nodded, still staring at the scorch marks in the shape of footprints leading straight to 2A. After that night, half the tenants moved out by morning. The others pretended nothing had happened, though everyone looked like they hadn't slept. The manager boarded up 2A, nailed the door shut, hung a bright floodlight over the hallway, but I could feel it humming again behind the plaster. Carla showed up that evening with a small box in her hands. Inside was an old Polaroid camera and a single roll of film. "If he's tied to the light," she said, "maybe we can trap him in it." It sounded insane, but insanity was all we had left. That night, the hallway floodlight flickered, once, twice, then a slow rhythm, like breathing. We stood there, camera ready. A whisper slid out from the crack at the bottom of 2A's door. "He never leaves the light. He is the light." The bulb above us flared white hot. The door to 2A burst open. Smoke rolled out, thick and alive, swirling into a man shape. Arthur Vale stepped forward, skin made of ash, eyes glowing like coals. He lifted the lantern he always carried. Its fire burned without fuel. Carla raised the camera and snapped a picture. The flash exploded through the hall, washing everything in white. The figure screamed, not loud, but deep, like a furnace exhaling. When my vision cleared, the lantern lay shattered, and Arthur's shape was gone. For the first time, the hallway felt still. We thought it was over. But that night, I woke up to the sound of the camera shutter clicking in the dark. I turned on my lamp. The camera sat on my dresser, the flash still smoking. A fresh photo slid out. It showed me sleeping, and behind me, the faint outline of a man made of light. Standing in the corner, I threw the photo across the room. The bulb above me began to hum, a low steady sound, almost like words forming underneath. I killed the switch. The hum stopped. For a heartbeat, I thought it worked. Then the room glowed anyway, light leaking from the walls, the floor, even the seams of the ceiling. A voice rose out of it. "You can't turn off what you've become." My phone lit up on its own. The screen flashed the photo again and again, brighter each time until I could see nothing else. Then everything went black. I woke in the hospital 2 days later. Smoke inhalation, the doctor said. There'd been another fire, small, contained to my apartment. No one else hurt. Carla was gone. The manager swore no one by that name ever lived there. When they released me, I drove past Brookstone one last time. The building was condemned, windows boarded, but one light on the second floor still burned through the boards. My old unit, 2B. As I passed, my phone vibrated. New photo message, the same image. Me asleep, and the glowing figure behind me. Only this time, it was closer. Epilogue. I live in a different city now. Every apartment I rent, I bring a box of bulbs and keep them all burning. Neighbors complain about the light seeping under the doors, but I don't care. Because sometimes when one flickers, even for a moment, I catch the faint smell of smoke and hear the whisper, calm and steady. "Keep them bright so I can see you." When I first moved into Maple Hollow, I thought I'd found peace. After years of apartment noise and city chaos, the quiet of the suburbs felt like therapy. Just wind through the trees and the distant hum of sprinklers. My new house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, the kind of place where people wave while walking their dogs and every lawn looks like it's been measured by a ruler. My first weekend there, a moving van pulled up to the house next door. A family of 4 stepped out, husband, wife, 2 kids, a boy and a girl, maybe 10 and 12. The husband waved immediately. "Afternoon, neighbor." He had that all-American look, pressed shirt, square jaw, polite smile. His name was Tom Greenfield. His wife, Lydia, wore a floral dress that looked like it came straight out of a 1950s magazine ad. Their kids stood beside them, smiling politely. Too politely. The girl clutched a doll identical to herself. Same hair, same blue dress. That first night I watched from my porch as they unpacked. No shouting, no tired sighs, just smooth mechanical coordination. They didn't even speak much. When darkness fell, every light in their house flicked on at once and stayed on. All night. The next morning, Tom was already mowing the lawn, 6 a.m. sharp. His son, dressed in the same collared shirt, stood beside him holding a plastic bag. Every time the mower stopped, the boy bent down, picked something invisible off the grass, and dropped it into the bag. When I waved, Tom smiled too wide. "Morning, neighbor." His lips moved, but his eyes didn't. Later that day, I found a note slipped under my front door in neat handwriting. "We hope you'll join us for dinner soon. It's important to be part of the neighborhood." No signature. That evening, I noticed something strange. The Greenfields' blinds never closed. From my living room window, I could see straight into their house. They all sat at the dinner table, unmoving, for nearly an hour. No one ate, no one spoke, just stillness. Then Lydia turned her head, slowly, directly toward my window. Our eyes met across the yard. She smiled, and every light in their house flickered once. The next few days, I tried to mind my own business. But things started to go wrong in my house. The TV turned itself on at night, always static. My phone alarm rang at 3:17 a.m. every morning, even though I never set it. And once, when I opened my refrigerator, every light in my house went out for exactly 3 seconds. When they came back, the word "hello" was written in condensation on the fridge door. I wiped it off, but the chill it left behind didn't fade. On Sunday, Tom invited me over for dinner. He appeared at my doorstep right as the sun dipped below the trees, holding a casserole dish that smelled faintly metallic. "Just something Lydia whipped up," he said. "We'd love for you to come by tonight." I wanted to say no, but his smile didn't allow it. It felt rehearsed, like a puppet whose strings were being pulled from somewhere else. I nodded. "Sure, what time?" "8, he said. "That's when the lights are strongest." Before I could ask what that meant, he was already walking away. At 8 sharp, I crossed the yard. Their door opened before I knocked. The Greenfields stood in the foyer, perfectly still, smiling. The air smelled of ozone, like the air before lightning strikes. Inside, the house was spotless. Too spotless. Everything gleamed, not a speck of dust anywhere. And the lights, bright, white, almost humming. We sat at the table. The food looked normal: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, but it was cold. Lydia tilted her head. "We don't eat much anymore," she said softly. "It makes it easier to listen." "Listen to what?" I asked. Her smile widened. "The current." The boy and girl both turned their heads toward me at the same time, in the exact same motion. Their eyes shimmered, not like pupils, but reflections, like light bouncing off glass. Something about the air changed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. When I pulled it out, the screen flashed a notification. "New device connected. Maple Hollow." Network. Then faintly, I heard static. Coming not from the phone, but from them. When I got home, I locked every door. My lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. I sat on the couch trying to shake the unease. Then, from the window facing their house, I saw all 4 Greenfields standing in their yard, facing my home. Not moving, just staring. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, motionless, glowing faintly from the porch light. At 2 a.m., the power in my house cut out. Not a storm, no surge, just click. Total darkness. Then came a faint buzzing sound from the wall behind my bed, like electricity whispering through static. "Are you awake?" It wasn't a voice from outside. It came from inside the wall. I froze. "Who's there?" The buzzing grew clearer, forming words like a radio trying to find a frequency. "We like the way you listen. The hairs on my arms rose. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my flashlight, and pointed it at the outlet on the wall. The sound stopped instantly, but when I turned the flashlight off again, I swear I saw something move behind the plastic faceplate, something shifting, like a small muscle flexing. By morning, power was back. Everything worked like normal. I convinced myself it was exhaustion, stress, or bad wiring, until I checked my phone. I had dozens of new photos, taken during the night.
All black.
All except the last one, which showed me asleep in bed with faint glowing outlines near the walls. That afternoon, I saw Lydia in her yard trimming hedges with surgical precision. Her movements were jerky, like frames of a video missing between motions. When she noticed me, she stopped mid-cut and smiled. "You heard it, didn't you?" "What?" "The hum. It means you're connecting." She walked closer, lowering her voice. "We used to fight it too. But the current wants to grow. It needs hosts. Neighbors make perfect conduits." Her eyes flickered white for a second, like a bulb shorting out. Then she blinked and went back to trimming as if nothing happened. That night, I recorded audio from the outlet on my phone. At first, just a hum. But when I slowed it down in an editing app, voices emerged beneath the static. "Don't let them unplug you. The children feed the signal. Join us at the grid." I dropped the phone. The outlet sparked once. Then every light in the house turned on by itself. I called the police. 2 officers arrived, looked around, saw nothing wrong. As they left, one of them stopped at the door and said quietly, "Funny thing. We got a similar call from this address about 5 years ago." "From this house?" I asked. He nodded. "Guy said the neighbors were talking through the power lines. We never found him. His house was empty, but the lights were all on when we got here. After they left, I decided to stay at a motel. Packed a few clothes, grabbed my laptop, and turned to leave. But the power died again. The sound returned. Louder this time. "Don't go yet. You're almost complete." I ran for the front door. It wouldn't open. The knob burned my hand, electric heat, through the window. I saw the Greenfields standing in their driveway, each holding a cord, long, black, coiled like veins, running from their house to mine. The cords pulsed with light. Lydia raised her head, her voice echoing inside my mind instead of my ears. Connection established. Every device in my house turned on at once. TV, phone, microwave, lamps, all flickering images of static mixed with faces. My own face among them. Then, darkness. When I came to, the power was back and the cords were gone. It was morning again. I went outside. Everything looked normal. Tom waved from his porch with that same perfect smile. "Morning, neighbor. Great to see you connected." I didn't respond. I just went back inside, locked everything, and sat in the dark. But the hum was still there. Soft, steady, inside every wall. By the 3rd week, I'd stopped pretending the Greenfields were normal. Every night, something new happened. Faint clicking sounds in the pipes, light bulbs flickering in perfect rhythm, voices threading through the hum of my refrigerator. They were everywhere. The current wasn't just in the walls anymore. It was in me. One morning, I caught myself standing in my kitchen, hand on the light switch, flicking it on and off over and over again. I didn't even realize I was doing it until the switch started sparking. When I pulled my hand away, I noticed something. The skin around my fingertips looked burned. Small, dark rings forming around each nail like electric scars. That's when I decided to film everything. I set up a camera facing the Greenfields' house and left it recording. Overnight, at exactly 3:17 a.m., every light in their home flared. The camera caught movement. 4 shadows stepping out into their yard. The family stood in a circle facing inward, their arms slightly raised. The streetlights began to pulse, one by one, matching their movements. Then, out of nowhere, a 5th shadow appeared in the circle. taller, thinner, its limbs unnaturally long, and then the footage cut to static. When I checked the timestamp, the camera had stopped at 3:18 a.m. sharp. The next morning, I found something strange in my mailbox, a printed photo of me sleeping, taken through my bedroom window. Scrawled across the bottom were 3 words: "You are chosen." I went straight to the police again, but when they arrived, there was no photo. The mailbox was empty. They gave me that look, the kind that says you need rest, not help. That night I heard knocking on my door, 3 slow, heavy knocks. When I looked through the peephole, no one was there, but the lights outside my house began to flicker, one by one, starting from the Greenfields porch and moving down the street toward me. It was like the entire neighborhood was breathing together, in light. Then, faintly, from inside the house, a voice whispered, "Let them in." The lights went out, and something started moving in the dark. Footsteps, dragging across the floor, slow and deliberate. When I turned my flashlight on, the house was empty, but the outlet in the hallway was glowing faintly blue. I knelt down. The hum returned. "Who are you?" I whispered. The static hissed, then formed a voice, broken, human. We were here before the power, before the grid. They opened the wires. Now we live inside. Inside what? Inside you." The outlet sparked violently and I stumbled back, hitting the wall. The lights came back on by themselves and too bright, buzzing loud enough to rattle the windows. Across the yard, the Greenfields curtains opened. They were standing there again, all 4 of them, smiling, staring straight at me. This time, they waved. I unplugged everything in my house. Every lamp, every cord, every appliance. I even flipped the main breaker in the basement. Total darkness, silence, but even then, I could still hear it, a low hum, somewhere deep below the house. I followed it to the basement wall and pressed my ear to the concrete. Faintly, I could hear whispers beneath the surface, not one voice, but hundreds, some pleading, some chanting, and one clear as day. You can't turn off what you've joined. The next morning, I woke up on the basement floor. No memory of falling asleep. On the wall beside me, drawn in black soot, was a symbol, a spiral made of tiny lightning bolts looping into an eye. Outside, I heard children laughing. When I looked through the window, the Greenfield kids were standing in my yard, playing jump rope with a cord, a thick black electrical wire. The girl smiled when she saw me watching. "Want to play, mister?" Her voice sounded layered, like more than one person speaking at once. Then Tom appeared behind them, his movements stiff, precise. "Come on over," he said. "You've been resisting long enough." Behind him, Lydia opened her mouth, and a soft white light poured out, flickering like a broken bulb. I ran back inside and barricaded the door. Every outlet started to glow. The hum rose to a scream. My phone, even though it was unplugged and powered off, lit up by itself. On the screen, a message appeared. "Tonight at 3:17, the grid completes." All day the neighborhood felt wrong. Too quiet, too still, like the air itself was holding its breath. Every house around me had its blinds closed, yet behind the fabric I could see a faint white glow, pulsing in time. By sunset, the hum had become constant. It wasn't just in my walls anymore. It vibrated in my teeth, in the water pipes, in my bones. All a.m. I sat in the dark basement, flashlight clutched in one hand, breaker still off. No electricity anywhere in the house, yet the hum kept getting louder. At 3:16 a.m., the floor began to tremble. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The temperature dropped so suddenly that my breath turned to fog. Then I heard footsteps above me. 4 pairs, moving in perfect sync. They stopped over the basement door. A pause. Then the knob began to turn, slow and steady. "It's time to join, neighbor," Tom's voice called through the wood. Except it wasn't really his voice anymore. Each word buzzed with distortion, like a human mouth repeating what a radio signal wanted it to say. I aimed my flashlight at the door. The light flickered and went out through 17 a.m. The entire house lit up at once, every bulb exploding into white fire. The breaker was still off, but light poured from the outlets, the vents, even the cracks between boards. In the glow stood the Greenfields. Their skin was paper thin now, stretched over cords of light that pulsed beneath like living wires. Lydia stepped forward, her eyes two steady beams. "You've kept us waiting," she said softly, "but the current forgives." Behind her, the kids began humming, the same frequency I'd heard for weeks. Their voices merged with the lights until words formed inside my head. "The grid is awake. It feeds through connection. Accept it and see." The floor split open with a crack, revealing thick black cables twisting below like veins under skin. They pulsed toward me, hungry. I ran. Through the living room, past windows flashing white, out the front door. Outside, every house on the street was alive. Windows glowing, cords crawling across lawns like roots. Neighbors stood in their driveways, motionless, faces lit from within. They all turned their heads toward me in perfect unison. One voice, shared by dozens of mouths, echoed through the cul-de-sac. "Stay connected." The cords from my porch caught my ankle and burned cold. I tore free and sprinted to my truck. When I started it, the dashboard flickered. For a moment, the radio whispered in the Greenfield's voice, "You can drive, but you can't unplug." Then the headlights died. I don't remember much after that. There was light, so bright it filled the sky, and a sound like 100 transformers exploding at once. When I opened my eyes again, it was morning. No hum, no lights, just silence. The Greenfields' house was gone. Not burned down, gone, replaced by an empty lot of smooth black glass. Every other home on the street looked untouched, but not a single person remained. No cars, no movement, just doors hanging open and televisions glowing faintly with static. I drove until my tank was dry. Now I live 2 states away, in a cabin with no power, no phone, no light bulbs. At night I watch the stars and tell myself it's over. But sometimes, just before dawn, I hear it again. That soft, familiar hum creeping through the wood. And in the corner of my dark room, a tiny blue spark winks once, like an eye opening. Connection found. When I moved to Willow Creek Lane, I thought it was the kind of place people moved to escape their problems. Wide streets, quiet nights, lawns cut so clean they looked fake. I'd bought my first house there, a single-story ranch with faded blue paint and a cracked mailbox. Across the street stood another house, bigger, older. Its windows were clouded with dust. Its porch sagged, and the "for sale" sign looked like it had been there for years. The locals called it the Breyer Place. Everyone said it had been empty since the 90s, when the Breyer family vanished during a winter storm. The first few weeks were normal. I worked from home, fixed things around the house, mowed the lawn, but almost every time I stepped outside, I felt watched. You know that prickling at the back of your neck? The kind that makes you look over your shoulder even when you're alone. It always came from that house across the street. At first I thought it was just nerves. But then on my 5th night there, I noticed something odd, a faint orange light glowing behind the upstairs window. It wasn't a lamp. It flickered, moved, like someone walking around with a candle. The next morning I mentioned it to my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Harper. She was one of those old women who always seemed to be watering her plants, even when it rained. She froze when I brought it up. "You saw a light in the Breyer house?" "Yeah, maybe someone broke in." Her lips tightened. "Don't go over there. That house doesn't like to be noticed." That sounded ridiculous. "It's a house, Mrs. Harper." She looked me dead in the eye. "That's what everyone says at first. That night I couldn't resist looking. From my living room window, I stared at the old place across the street. Dark, silent. Then, right around midnight, the upstairs curtain moved, just slightly, like someone had brushed past it. I turned off my lights to see better. That's when I noticed the faint outline of a figure standing in the window, tall, still, and I swear, it was facing me. I blinked, and the curtain fell back into place. The next morning, I found muddy footprints on my porch. Only 2 prints, 1 step up, 1 step back. Too big to be mine. I checked my doorbell camera, but the recording was corrupted, just static. When it finally played, all I could hear was faint breathing. That evening, the light appeared again, this time in the downstairs window, and that same shadow, tall, motionless, was right behind it. Curiosity won. I crossed the street with my flashlight and climbed the cracked steps to the briar porch. The wood creaked under my weight. I expected dust and cobwebs. Instead, the air smelled faintly of burnt wood and old perfume. Through the glass of the front door, I could just barely make out shapes. Furniture covered in sheets. A stairway leading up, and on the wall near the door, a mirror. In it I saw myself. And behind me, in my own house across the street, a flicker of light. I turned. Nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, the reflection of my house window was still glowing. That night, I sat on my porch with the lights off, staring at the dark house. And then, faintly from across the street, I saw the glow again. Only this time, it wasn't orange. It was white, cold, bright, almost like a flash, like someone taking a picture. And when it faded, something inside the house seemed closer. The white flash didn't leave my eyes for a long time. Even after I went inside, I could still see that faint after image hovering in my vision, like the ghost of a camera flash burned into my brain. I told myself it was lightning, but the sky had been clear. By morning, I tried to laugh it off. Still, when I opened my front door, there was an envelope lying on the welcome mat. No return address, no stamps, just my name, written in shaky pen. Inside were 3 Polaroid photos. Each one showed my house. The first was my front porch. The second, my living room window, curtains open, lights off. The third, me, asleep on the couch, mouth slightly open, blanket half slipped off. Someone had taken it from outside my window. I ran straight to Mrs. Harper's house. She opened the door before I even knocked twice. "You went over there, didn't you?" she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired, resigned. I handed her the photos. She didn't even look surprised. That's how it starts. Once the house notices you, it doesn't stop. What does that mean? She looked past me toward the Briar house. Sometimes late at night it sends pictures, sometimes voices, but it always starts with light. Who's sending them? She hesitated, then whispered, "The one's still in there." That night I covered every window with blankets, turned off every light, sat on the couch with a baseball bat across my knees. At exactly 12:07 a.m., my phone vibrated. No number, just unknown. When I opened the message, there was one photo attached. It showed the Briar house, upstairs window glowing, and in the reflection of the glass, I could see my own living room behind me, even though I was sitting in the dark. Then another text arrived. "Smile for the next one." My stomach dropped. Outside, a white flash lit up my entire house. I didn't even breathe. I checked the curtains, light still seeping through the cracks. Slowly, I lifted one edge just enough to peek outside. The Briar house stood silent across the street, but the upstairs window was open for the first time. Something was leaning out. Not a person, more like a shape cut out of the dark, thin arms gripping the sill. A long, slow creak echoed through the night as the front door of the Briar house began to open on its own. I backed away from the window, phone still in my hand. Another photo came through, this time completely black, except for faint text scratched into the digital noise. Come closer. The lights in my house flickered once, then again. And through the thin fabric covering the windows, I saw it. The same white flash, closer this time. The house wasn't taking pictures from inside anymore. It was on my lawn. I called 911. The dispatcher answered, female voice, calm, routine.
911, what's your emergency?
There's someone outside my house, I said. Across the street. The old Briar place. I think they're taking pictures. Silence. Then a faint click, like the line switched channels. The same voice spoke again, but slower. Stay by the window. We're sending light. The call cut out. I dropped the phone and ran to the kitchen. Every bulb flickered on, one by one, like a row of dominoes. Through the front window, the Briar house blazed to life. Every light in every room turned on at once, spilling white across the street. And in each window, a face stared out, pale, unmoving, identical. One of them lifted a hand and waved. The power in my house surged, and for a split second, every appliance turned on, the TV blaring static, the microwave humming, the ceiling fan spinning so fast it blurred, then silence again. When I dared to look back outside, all the lights in the Briar house were out, except one, the upstairs window, where a camera flash blinked once more. Sleep didn't come that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flash, a burst of white light, freezing me in place like a photograph that never fades. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was just some lunatic messing with me. Maybe kids, maybe someone squatting in the Briar place. But when I went outside to check for footprints on the lawn, the grass looked burned. Perfect circular patches, like the ground itself had been scorched by a flash bulb. And then I noticed something new. My mailbox flag was up. Inside, there was another envelope, no name this time, just a single Polaroid of me standing on my porch, holding the first set of pictures from the day before. Except in this one, there was something behind me, a faint gray silhouette. Too close, too tall. I didn't go to work, didn't even shower. Instead, I went to the town library, looking up anything I could find about the Briar family. There wasn't much, a few faded clippings about a missing persons investigation in 1997. The father, Thomas Briar, was a photographer. Neighbors said he was obsessed with capturing moments that never end. Article said his wife and daughter were last seen one night after he'd set up lights around the house for a family portrait. Police never found them, but they found his camera. Every photo on it was pure white, completely overexposed, except one. The last picture showed their living room, and the window looking out across the street. The caption scribbled on the back read, "It's looking back now." That was enough to make me call the realtor's office listed on the for sale sign. The woman who answered sounded exhausted. "Is this about the Briar property?" she asked before I could say anything. "Yeah. Do you know if anyone's been inside recently?" She sighed. "No one's been willing to go near it for years. We don't even keep keys anymore. You're the fifth person to ask this month." "Fifth? Yeah. People move in around there, stay a few weeks and start seeing lights. Then they move out. Do any of them talk about photos?" I asked. She paused. "Polaroids." My throat went dry. "Yes. I'm sorry," she whispered. "But you shouldn't be living across from that house." Then she hung up. That night, I taped black garbage bags over every window. No light in or out, but even with the windows sealed, my phone kept buzzing. One message, then another, each with an image attached. I didn't open them. Not at first, but curiosity eats away at you, doesn't it? When I finally looked, my hands started to shake. The first photo was my living room, completely dark except for my silhouette. The second was closer, and the third? was right behind me. I spun around, no one there. But the smell hit me, that faint mix of burnt dust and old perfume. I followed it to the hallway, and there, hanging on the wall, was a framed photograph that hadn't been there before. It showed the Breyer house in daylight. Perfect, clean, normal. But in one of the windows, I could see myself, standing exactly where I was right now, looking at it. The picture frame was warm to the touch. I called Mrs. Harper again. She answered after one ring. "Mrs. Harper, I think the house—" "I told you not to let it notice you," she interrupted, voice trembling. "Once it starts showing you things, it's already inside." "Inside?" "The Breyer man thought he could capture it with his camera," she said. "But it wasn't in the photo." "It was the photo." Then she whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Don't look at it again," and she hung up. I tried. I really did. But curiosity turned into obsession. I wanted proof. So the next night, I took my own camera and stepped outside. The air was heavy, static in the breeze. The house across the street loomed darker than usual, like the night bent around it. I lifted the camera, pointed it at the upstairs window, and took one photo. A flash, quick and blinding. For a second, everything froze. Then my camera screen flickered, showing a distorted image of my house instead. Not the one I'd just photographed. And in that image, a figure was standing behind my living room window, watching. I dropped the camera. Its lens cracked against the pavement, spilling the memory card onto the ground. When I picked it up, it was burning hot, and carved into the plastic somehow were two words: "Look back." By the time the sun rose, I'd made up my mind. I was done being afraid. Whatever was happening, whatever the Breyer house wanted, it had already taken over my nights. It was time to end it. I grabbed my flashlight, my camera, and crossed the street. The asphalt still shimmered faintly from the morning dew. Everything was silent. No birds, no wind, just that thick, heavy quiet that settles before a storm. The house loomed above me, taller than I remembered. The wood siding was pale and blistered, the windows like blank eyes. I put my hand on the doorknob. It turned easily, like it had been waiting. Inside smelled like dust and burnt film. The air was colder, not normal cold, but something that felt alive. I swept my flashlight around. The living room was filled with furniture covered in white sheets, each one shaped vaguely like people sitting in chairs. My beam caught the edge of a framed photograph on the mantel. When I wiped away the dust, my breath froze in my chest. It was a picture of me, standing on the porch from earlier that morning, and next to me, in the photo, was a man's shape. Blurry, pale, with no face. The name on the brass plate under the frame read, Thomas Breyer. Something creaked upstairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps. I aimed my flashlight at the staircase. Each step groaned as I climbed, my heart slamming in my chest. At the top, the hallway stretched ahead, wallpaper peeling in long strips. There were photos everywhere, hundreds of them, nailed to the walls. Every single one was of me, sleeping, eating, sitting at my desk, and in every picture, there was that same gray shape, standing a little closer each time. At the end of the hall, a door stood open, the room with the upstairs window. That glowing orange light pulsed faintly inside, flickering like a dying candle. When I stepped in, I froze. The room was a makeshift dark room. Dozens of Polaroids hung from strings, still dripping chemicals that stained the floor. A camera sat on a tripod facing the window. Its lens was pointed directly across the street, at my house. And next to it, lying on the table, was a stack of fresh photos. The top one showed me entering the Breyer house. Moments ago, I heard breathing, not from behind me, from everywhere. I turned toward the window and for the first time saw what was really in the glass. It wasn't a reflection. It was deeper, like looking down a tunnel that stretched into 1,000 other houses, each one showing me standing in this same room. And in the reflection closest to me, a figure began to move. It looked like a man, gray, expressionless, with hollow eyes that flickered white with each breath. He raised his camera. The flash went off. Everything turned white. When my vision cleared, I wasn't in the Breyer house anymore. I was looking at it from across the street, standing on my porch. The lights inside the house flickered, one by one, until the upstairs window glowed again. Behind it, I could see a silhouette pacing. Same height, same build, same face. It was me. Days passed. Or maybe weeks. Time doesn't move right anymore. Every night the house across the street lights up. And every time it does, the me in that window looks a little clearer, more real. Meanwhile, I feel myself fading, like an old photograph losing its color. Sometimes, when cars pass by, people wave to the man in the window, not to me. I don't think they can see me anymore. Last night I found a Polaroid on my doorstep. It showed the Breyer house all lit up, and the caption written underneath said, "Perfect exposure." Now I sit here on my porch, camera in hand, watching the lights come on again. I know what it wants. I know what it did to the Breyers. And soon, when that white flash comes again, I'll raise my camera too. Because maybe if I take the picture first, maybe if I capture it before it captures me, maybe then I'll finally disappear the rest of the way. When I moved into the Ridgewood apartments, I wasn't looking for luxury. I just needed a place that didn't leak, didn't smell like mold, and didn't eat half my paycheck. Apartment 2A was fine. Plain beige walls, a small balcony, creaky floors. But the best part was the quiet. Or at least that's what I thought. For the first few weeks, everything was peaceful. No parties, no kids running around, no weird smells wafting through the vents. Until one night around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps, slow, steady steps across the ceiling, pacing from one side of the apartment above me to the other. It wasn't unusual. Apartments share sound. But what struck me was the rhythm. Every night, same time. Same exact pattern, back and forth. Stop. Back again. Like someone walking the same route over and over. After a few nights, it started to bug me. So I asked the manager, Mr. Klein, about the tenant upstairs. He looked up from his paperwork. "You mean 3A? "Yeah," I said. "The person up there walks around at night." "Kinda hard to sleep," Mr. Klein frowned. "The 3A's been empty for years," I laughed. "No, seriously. Someone moved in. You can hear her walking every night." He shook his head. "No one lives there, son. We sealed that unit up. Pipes burst years ago. It's not safe." That night, the footsteps came again. I tried to tell myself it was the building settling, or maybe a raccoon on the roof. But then I heard something that wasn't just walking. It was humming. A woman's voice. Soft, almost sweet, like a lullaby without words. It drifted down through the ceiling vent, low and steady. I froze, staring up at the cracked paint above my bed. The tune went on for maybe 30 seconds, then stopped, and after that came the sound of something heavy sliding across the floor. A chair, maybe. Then silence. The next morning I decided to check for myself. The door to 3A was at the end of the hall, the paint chipped. The lock rusted. A strip of yellow tape still clung to the frame, the kind that reads, "Maintenance, do not enter." I pressed my ear against the door. Nothing. But just as I turned to leave, I heard it again, that faint humming right behind the door. I backed away slowly. And then I saw something through the keyhole, not light. Not movement, an eye. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The humming stopped. I ran downstairs to Mr. Klein's office, but it was locked for lunch. By the time I got back to my apartment, everything was quiet again. Too quiet. The ceiling above me looked darker somehow. The corners shadowed in a way that made my skin crawl. I tried to distract myself, turned on the TV, but even with the volume up, I kept hearing faint creaks from above. Every sound perfectly matched my own movements. When I stepped toward the kitchen, a step echoed above. When I sat on the couch, I heard a chair creak and sink. It was like whoever was up there was copying me. That night I woke up to a thud. Something had fallen, hard. I stared at the ceiling. Silence. Then a second thud, closer to the corner where my bed sat. And then, whispering. It was faint, muffled through the drywall, but I could swear it was right above me. A woman's voice, low and steady, repeating a single word. I couldn't make it out at first. Then I realized she was saying my name. I couldn't sleep that night. The ceiling above me was alive with sounds. Soft footsteps, chairs scraping, the faint humming I'd heard before. I kept imagining someone walking right above me. And each time I closed my eyes, I could hear a faint whisper. Come closer. By the time morning came, I'd made up my mind. I had to see what was inside 3A. The hallway smelled faintly of mildew. Yellow maintenance tape still hung from the door frame. I tried the handle. Locked. No surprise. I leaned closer, peering through the keyhole. Nothing. Then I noticed scratches, tiny claw marks around the edge, like someone had tried to escape. Or keep someone out. The humming started again, soft at first, then growing louder. I could hear furniture moving. A low groan of wood sliding across the floor. Then the scrape of metal. Then a soft sigh. I pressed my ear against the door. A woman's voice whispered clearly this time. You're here. I jumped back, heart pounding. I didn't know whether to run or try to force it open. Then, from behind me, I heard another sound. Footsteps coming down the hall. Slow, deliberate. I ducked into the stairwell, holding my breath. A shadow passed the door at the end of the hall. Tall, thin, moving just slightly out of sync with my heartbeat. When the shadow disappeared, I ran back to my apartment and slammed the door. For the next few nights, I kept hearing it. Always at the same time, 2:13 a.m. First, soft footsteps. Then humming. Then a low whisper. Come closer. I tried ignoring it, but the sounds began mimicking me. When I walked, so did the footsteps. When I sat, so did the chair scrape. One night, I heard it, a faint laugh, coming from directly above my bed. I grabbed a flashlight and shined it at the ceiling. The light flickered, and for a brief second, I saw the outline of a woman. Translucent, like a reflection. Her face wasn't clear, but her eyes were fixed on me. And then she disappeared. I needed answers. I went back to Mr. Klein. This is insane, I said, slamming my hands on his desk. Someone's in 3A. I hear her. I see her, and she's copying me. He didn't flinch. You've seen her before, haven't you? What do you mean? He sighed. 3A has a history. A tenant died there 10 years ago. The police said it was an accident, but neighbors claim she never left. You mean she's a ghost? He shook his head. I don't know what she is, but everyone who's lived below her hears the same things. Footsteps, humming, copying movements, and sometimes names. He leaned in. They call it a residual presence. I call it dangerous. Don't go near that door, but curiosity doesn't care about warnings. That night I packed a flashlight, a crowbar, and my phone. I crept down the hallway. The hum was louder than ever. The whispering clearer. Come, closer, closer. I pressed the crowbar into the edge of the door. It gave slightly. A cold draft hit me as I pushed. The door opened. Inside was darkness. The air was thick, musty. The faint glow of a phone light revealed a small apartment frozen in time. Furniture covered in sheets. A calendar stuck on December. 10 years ago. And in the corner, a chair rocking slowly. I shone my flashlight toward it. A woman sat there, her face pale, eyes hollow, hair black and stringy. She smiled and whispered finally. I don't remember how long I stood there staring at her. The woman in the chair didn't move. Her eyes were open but empty, like she was looking through me. The room smelled like dust and something sweet that had gone sour. Perfume left on skin too long. I tried to speak, but my throat locked. Then the woman's head tilted just a little, like she'd heard something far away. You came. Her voice wasn't from her mouth. It was inside my head, soft as a sigh. I stepped back. The floor groaned under my weight, and in that instant she vanished. The chair was still rocking. My flashlight flickered. Across the room, a door creaked open by itself. Inside was a bathroom. The air was colder, sharp, metallic. A cracked mirror hung above the sink. When my light hit it, I froze. The reflection didn't show me standing in the doorway. It showed me sitting on my bed, back in my own apartment, staring at the ceiling, and above that version of me, on the ceiling, the outline of the woman in 3A crawled closer. I stumbled backward, knocking over a shelf. The mirror fell, shattering. The sound echoed like a scream. When I looked down, I saw pieces of my reflection scattered across the floor, each shard showing something different. Me asleep. Me eating dinner. Me sitting at my desk. Scenes from my own life. All from angles that shouldn't exist. Someone, or something, had been watching me through the mirror. I ran. Back through the hall, down the stairs, across to my own apartment. I locked the door and leaned against it, chest heaving. Everything looked normal again. Too normal. I turned every light on. But as soon as I did, my phone buzzed. Unknown number 1 picture attached. It showed the shattered mirror in 3A, and in the reflection of one of the shards, my living room. Right now, behind me, I spun around. Nothing there. Then I noticed the sound, a faint scraping from the ceiling. The same rhythm as before, back and forth, but this time it didn't stay above me. The sound moved down the wall like someone was crawling inside it. The drywall bulged outward, then went still, and then came a whisper, pressed right against the inside of the wall. You looked. I called the police. 2 officers came, checked 3A, checked my place. They found nothing. One of them, the older guy, looked uneasy. You say you saw a woman? Yeah, black hair, pale. She talked to me. He exchanged a glance with his partner. 10 years ago, a tenant up there, Melissa Hayes. She disappeared. They found blood in the bathroom, but never a body. He rubbed the back of his neck. Her boyfriend lived below her, same unit you're in now. Said she wouldn't stop following him, even after she was gone. That night I didn't try to sleep. I sat on the couch with the lights on and stared at the ceiling. Nothing. Silence. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., my TV turned on by itself. Static hissing. Light flickering. Through the static, an image started to form. A room. My room. The camera angle looked down from above, like someone watching from the ceiling. In the upper corner of the screen, something moved, black hair spilling forward as a face slowly leaned into view. The woman from 3A. Her mouth opened wider than it should have, and a whisper bled through the static. You live here now. I pulled the plug, threw the TV cable out the window, but the sound kept going, low, wet breathing through the vents. And when I glanced at the window, I saw her reflection in the glass even though no one was behind me. The next day I packed my things. I was done. I didn't care about my lease, my deposit, or my dignity. I just wanted out. But when I opened the door, the hallway didn't look right. The lights were dimmer, the walls darker. The air smelled like wet plaster and rust. And at the end of the hall, the door to 3A was wide open. Something moved inside. Not footsteps, more like the slow drag of fingers against the floor. I told myself to keep walking, but curiosity has its own gravity. I stepped forward. Each creak of the floor sounded like a warning. Halfway down the hall, the humming began again, that same soft melody, looping endlessly. Then a whisper followed it, low and close. "Don't leave me again." I froze. I knew that voice. It was my own. I turned around, expecting someone behind me. Nothing. But ahead, inside 3A, I could see movement. A shape pacing back and forth. I reached the door. The room was darker than I remembered. The rocking chair sat still this time, facing the window. Dust swirled in the light from the hallway, and then, from the ceiling above me, came a heavy thud. Plaster cracked. A chunk of ceiling hit the floor. Something was up there, crawling, shifting like hands pushing through drywall. A second thud, then another. Dust rained down, and the entire ceiling bowed inward, ready to collapse. I backed up just as it gave way. A cloud of dust and insulation exploded outward, and through it, a shape dropped down. The woman, only she wasn't standing this time. She was hanging, her hair tangled in the broken rafters, her face twisted toward me, eyes black with emptiness. She smiled. "Now you're above me." I ran, through the hall, down the stairs, straight to the lobby. But the front door wouldn't open, no matter how hard I pulled. The lobby lights flickered, and for a split second, every reflection in the glass doors showed her instead of me. Dozens of her, each one smiling wider, eyes darker. Then the lights went out. When they came back on, I wasn't in the lobby anymore. I was standing in apartment 3A. The walls were sealed, the windows boarded. The mirror was whole again, unbroken, and in the reflection, I saw myself sitting in the rocking chair. Only my reflection was smiling. I screamed, but no sound came out. The mirror rippled like water. A hand reached through, pale, thin, wet. It grabbed my wrist and pulled. I fought, but the strength behind it wasn't human. My feet slid across the floor. The last thing I saw before the world went black was my reflection looking calm, serene, as I disappeared into the mirror. When I opened my eyes again, everything was still. Sunlight spilled through the boarded window. The chair rocked quietly, and across the hall I heard someone moving into the apartment below. A man's voice. "New tenant," he was humming.